Order here, Cadillac Planning Commission for tonight, here, February 24th, 2025. If everyone would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Oh. Hi, Marcus.
Hey.
Roll call, please, Danielle.
Yeah. Host. Rice.
Here.
Bunce.
Here.
Bosher.
Here.
Bauman.
Here.
Spent.
Here.
Van Pelt.
Here.
Putvin.
Here. Thank you. Before I go for the approval of tonight's agenda, want to kind of boggle public hearing A. Want to have that removed since we do not have all the information necessary at this time and feel it would not be in our best interest to go through everything yet until we get that. So I would like to remove item A from public hearing. And then I would accept the new agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as proposed with the elimination of 3A.
Support.
Thank you. Roll, please.
Putvin.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
Spent.
Yes.
Rice.
Yep.
Host. Bunce.
Yes.
He's Fent and Bones.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, perfect.
I'll get it.
Okay, so, all right, we got that, all right. Then look for an approval. We did not have a meeting, for those that follow us, we did not have a meeting in January of 2025, so approval of our December 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes.
Looking for a motion to approve?
Please,
Motion to approve?
Gene?
Bauman.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Host.
Moving right along, so, public hearing. Before we get going, so we have an application filed by Troy Baxter on behalf of the owner of the property, Cornerstone Tabernacle, requesting property on Wright Street. Not gonna read off that big number, anyway, be rezoned from R2 to RM1. Having read that, staff will update us on this.
The PowerPoint. And that's turned on for you.
Items B and C are, have to be acted on separately as separate parcels, but they're right next to each other. My presentation will address both parcels together in the presentation, but after my presentation, if the applicant wants to add comments, they could do so. But the public hearing has to be open and closed for each individual parcel, the one that fronts on Wright Street and then the other one that has the church on Aldrich Street. So you'll have to really be holding two public hearings. But in the end, it's all the same material in terms of addressing the general area in terms of the rezoning, so I'll get into my presentation.
Okay.
The only developed portion of the parcel at 534 has a institutional building on it, which has been serving as the Cornerstone Ministries Church. That building was built, and it's located between two single-family residential structures. In fact, the whole block is pretty much single-family residential. and it's the only commercial or institutional building on that block. To orient everyone on the two parcels, you can see the one on the upper portion of the graphic, which has frontage on Wright Street, is 3.31 acres. And then the parcel with the church building on Aldrich is 0.23 acres. So the entire parcel is about 3.5 acres if they're put together. The existing land use, essentially on the west side and the south side, you have single-family residential properties. To the north, you have industrial properties to the north of Wright Street. You can see in the photograph the solar farm that is located right there. And then to the south side, you have a CAPS school site, which I have a picture later on. And then you also have railroad tracks, which is MDOT property, to the east side of the property, which extends through that block. With zoning, the entire block upon which the parcels that are up for rezoning is zoned R2. Adjoining blocks to this block, which are south of Wright Street, are either zoned R2 or R4. R2 and R4 are primarily single-family districts. Blocks north of Wright Street are zoned in the I-1 industrial district. To give you some idea why there's even a need to create more multifamily properties, the colored parcels that you see on this map are the only parcels in the city currently zoned for multifamily. And the majority of these properties, in fact almost all of these properties, are currently developed on. So if you're going to develop any new single or multifamily developments for property that's already zoned for that use, you would be hard pressed to find anything in the city. The one that is vacant is at the end of Mosser Street, and we currently have a developer looking at developing that piece in a multifamily development. And then there's one small parcel at the very south part of the city off of Pearl, which is already owned and being proposed to be rezoned to something else. So right now we're looking at almost any new proposal for multifamily to propose a site that's not currently slated in the zoning ordinance. Proximity map, just to give you some idea, does it make any sense to do multifamily at this location? You can see the red circle on this map is the subject site. You can see to the north it's got good proximity to the industrial parks if people were going to wanted to live near where they might work. It's also got close proximity to the high school, and it's less than a mile to walk or bike into the downtown area. To give some idea of what is happening next to the church building, showing the homes that are located on either side to the east and west of the building, so you can get some idea of what the housing looks like immediately adjacent to the site. To the southern portion, or to the south of where the church building is, it looks out on over the CAPS, I forget which school site it is, but it's one of the CAPS properties across the street. It's an institutional use. In looking at the master plan, the city's master plan identifies the subject property be designated for medium density residential development. This district is intended primarily for single family development. However, it does indicate that some variety of housing types, density styles, and consumer preferences are appropriate. The following objectives are found on page 27 as goals or objectives for the single-family districts. And that's to maintain the current range of single-family residential districts to accommodate varying site densities, housing types, styles, and consumer preferences. And then also it included provide opportunity for single-family housing to be integrated into mixed-use development projects. So it didn't speak to being exclusive of just single-family, but to be primarily oriented towards that use. The other thing to consider too is our master plan is currently out of date. Certainly, if it were updated, we probably would have taken another look at creating more multiple family districts within the community. In fact, on the currently proposed zoning ordinance revision, this site was proposed for multifamily development. So while you can look to the master plan, it shouldn't be solely what you look at in that it's outdated, and it does suggest that it could be used for more than just single-family use. The questions you look at when you're looking at a rezoning happen to be all these questions. In the interest of time, I've responded in the staff report to the answers to all these questions. Basically, I found that when you take into account these questions, that it was reasonable to look at rezoning this property into a multifamily use. And certainly you can consult the staff report on the answers for those. Staff recommendation in consideration of the analysis for existing land use, zoning, master plan, and factors for zoning consideration. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend rezoning approval for both parcels to the City Council. It should be understood that a site plan will have to undergo a department head site plan review for any change of use of the church building or any new development. So if that change of use in the church were to happen, we'd be reviewing site plan. If somebody were proposing new development, it would have to go through site plan review, and that would be through the staff and department head review process. Recommended motions. I've broken them into two motions. Again, you'll have to consider each of these separately, both by public hearing and by discussion and vote, but recommending that both parcels be recommended to City Council for approval. And that's the end of my presentation. If you'd like to have the applicant fill in any gaps that I might have missed, they could do so.
Yes, Marcus.
Before we do that, I just wanted to jump in working with some interested developers that are kind of just kicking dirt around the area to see, if it makes sense to look at what the housing needs are for the city. I've recently looked at some of the housing studies, and one of the more recent ones that was done by our regional partner, Housing North, talks about how in their housing needs assessment that they did in 2023, that for Wexford County, and we're obviously the densest community within the county, there's currently a housing gap of 3,756 units through 2027, a rental gap of 1,360 rental units, a for sale gap of 2,396 units, and over a 5-year period within their region, which is not just Wexford County, but it's a broader area in Northwest Michigan. There's a housing gap of over 22,000 units, and so this one project certainly isn't going to be the silver bullet. However, as we continue to talk with folks that are interested in developing attainable units within our community, it continues to chip away at what is clearly a significant need in our community, and arguably in our area, and arguably in our region. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Marcus.
Yep.
I see Troy in the audience. Do you want to add anything before I open public hearing, Troy? Okay.
It's been a minute
State
since
your
I
name to
stood
everyone.
here.
I've seen you enough, but anyway, just state your name.
Okay, Troy Baxter,
Thank you.
pastor Cornerstone Ministries, and good to see friendly faces. and as we have looked at the possibility of developing multiple family units in this, and talking with city staff for over 5 years now, and looking at options there, we've fortunately the church has grown, and the parking issue that we currently have is most of it's up and down Aldrich Street, and to the degree that I ran over someone's mailbox and knocked it out. She's not here tonight. I did do a temporary fix, just too cold to dig the hole. But and to the degree that we try to stay out of people's driveways and our parking, we're trying to be good neighbors while we're still at that location. We've just simply outgrown it, which is a good problem for the church. But as we looking at residential there in that location and on Wright Street, the amount of traffic significantly will reduce. Not as much in and out, and obviously with any development that comes in after us would have to have off-street parking. It'd be a lot more in line with what's going on up and down Aldrich Street. So that's a positive thing. Also, right now, none of that property that's been mentioned is paying any property tax dollars. And I know that property tax dollars are a positive thing to the city. And so this proposal would take it out of a non-tax situation and put it into a taxable situation if and when the property's sold. And so rezoning the property helps us to market. As John has said, there's several developers and Mark has that are looking at being able to develop in Cadillac, and 3.5 acres in the city limits is hard to come by. So it's close to infrastructure, close to all the things that matter for those individuals. So this seems to be a perfect fit, and I know that nobody wants, some things in their backyard. So that's where the site plan and the restrictions for what happens in the zoning, come in. The throttle on what happens in this property takes place in a lot of the other successive steps if somebody were to develop. So my appeal is to move forward with the RM request, and then anyone that would want to come to develop that property would be subject to site plan review, which has been mentioned, and the guidelines, and obviously the neighborhood and community's input. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. So anyone in our viewing audience here,
And specifically on
Yeah,
on just
the right street.
it would be
on
the
just
one.
the right street.
Yeah, the one in yellow on the screen is the first public hearing.
I can talk about that. Brian Ellenboss, Linden Street. Those are my neighbors. You see the yellow line connects with the red line? I live across from the yellow line. They live right what would be in front of the apartment complex. it would have been nice. There are no guarantees by anybody that's going to put the apartments there, how close they're going to be to their neighbors, or what their plans are. And no matter what's said today, plans can change very quickly, can't they? So I guess they are, and I am concerned about the privacy of the neighbors. And I don't see anything for a blueprint, Troy. I wish you would have brought something, but you don't have one now, and you want to build there. And then we'll see the blueprint. And I'm concerned about my neighbors as they are concerned. I have more concerns about the other lot than this one, but I don't know. It's a tight fit. I hope if Troy gets his way that they work something that these people can still retain their privacy. How many big of apartment, Troy?
Yeah, we're
How many?
not even looking at site plans, blueprints, or anything of that nature. That'd be premature.
It's not going to be small, though, is it?
I don't know.
Okay, he says no. Let's face it, it's not going to be a small apartment in that lot. It's not going to be 4 or 5. It's going to be bigger than that. And that's the amount of people you're going to have coming going off Wright Street into there. Okay? I can't believe anybody is going to build an apartment complex in there for 5 or 10 people. Let's take a look at how many people are going to be living there, coming and going, affecting my neighbors. So, your decision, just a couple of thoughts. We'll hand it over to my neighbors. Maybe they have more. You're giving me a quizzical look, Dave. I'm going to talk to you afterwards.
I got it.
Okay? Okay, I hope so. That's about it until the red one, so thank you. Hey, you shook your head no. I don't know if I like that.
Well, that's because I didn't know I got the public hearing open before you got up there.
I thought he did.
Well, that's what I was attempting to do, and then you just walked up there. So,
Would you like me to start over?
no, I already heard it once.
Thank you, sir.
So
I thought you'd called it, John. I'm
I
sorry.
was ready to do that, yes.
Thought we were there.
Well, not quite, because I was announcing anyone in the audience, whoever had anything to say, to please come forward, but then you were forward before I finished.
No, don't give me that. No.
I'm not here to argue
I walked
about
up
nothing.
here after you
I'm-
said that.
I'm done right now with you, because I listened to it all. I heard it all.
You're lying. I walked up there.
Judge got it on
after you
camera. I
opened
don't
it.
care. I'm done with that.
Oh, good.
I'm just in. Anyone else, because now I'm apparently have the right to allow people to come. Hi,
Hello. Am I clear to?
you are 100% golden.
Okay. All right.
Your name?
My name is Charlie Tinker. I own the property. If you're facing the church, I own the property to the right.
Okay.
I'm also the prospective buyer. And I wanted to make a case very briefly. And again, as Troy alluded, we're not into specifics by any stretch of the imagination yet. I just think it's a great opportunity for some creative reuse that injects some more strength into the local housing stock. As a neighbor who's been in this neighborhood for several years now, I think any aesthetic improvements to the church would be a boon to the neighborhood. I think that they would probably amplify local property values. And as Marcus alluded, it'd be a pretty sorely needed injection into the local housing supply, which is sorely lacking at the moment. I also can't imagine that an apartment building within the footprint of the existing church, again, we're not talking about knocking the building down. It's a case of creative reuse. I can't imagine that would be any more obtrusive than having several days a week, a very large group of people parking along the road, parking behind the building, parking in front of the building. It's dozens of cars. Certainly, we wouldn't be talking about that number of vehicles at any one time. And I think it really gives folks the opportunity to plant some roots down in Cadillac, maybe the underhoused, as I have done myself. There are just so few of those opportunities out there for people as it stands right now to find something that's affordable in a place where they'd like to live. Yep.
So you're in favor of this?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie.
In favor of the red one, we're talking about the yellow one.
Both.
You're in favor of both, but you already hit on the red one, and we're supposed to be talking about the yellow.
I'm in favor of the yellow one, I'm in favor of the yellow one. Let me finish speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm in favor of the yellow one, and let the record reflect that I'd like to echo my comments for the red one, please.
Understood. Since it was presented together, I understand
Yes.
that motion, yes. Okay. Anyone else in the audience that has thoughts? Good or bad? Good evening.
Hi, sorry.
Right.
So we currently live at, I'm sorry,
Name, just a name.
I'm Jennifer,
Hi, Jennifer.
And I'm Scott. I live at 712 Linden Street.
and ignore our nasally stuff, we just got back from vacation. So right now, I think our biggest concern is not necessarily automatically just changing the zoning, but we want to know what it's going to look like. It's hard to say that we're in favor of a zoning change without having some sort of a blueprint, some sort of an idea of what it could look like. Again, we know it's not going to be, housing units for 5 or 10 people, but they could potentially, it's a big chunk of property that very well could potentially be 5 or 6 apartment units housing 30, 40 apartments in them. That's a lot of people going into this little space that's literally our backyard.
Part of
So-
the reason I bought that house 20 years ago was because it was like, you're in town, but like you look out in the field and there's nothing there. It's like you're living in
There's
the country,
wildlife.
you know?
We have wildlife out there. There's deer out there. There's, this past summer we had, there was baby possums
There's
and,
fox out there. There's all kinds of wildlife running through there too.
and like I said, our biggest thing, until we can have a blueprint to see what the development of the property could potentially look like, unfortunately, we would have to be, not in favor of it until we have an idea of something.
Absolutely.
Understand those concerns.
So,
And is it going to be low income? How is low income property going to bring down, our property values?
All good questions.
Until we know for sure, we can't really be on board with it. So
Understood.
so that's where we're at. Like I said, it predominantly affects us in the yellow area. I think that there would be some concern with the, into the red because they would flow together at some point eventually. And just the traffic that it would bring through, no matter where the drives are gonna go. Currently the drive off of Aldrich is fairly small, fairly narrow. There's not, right now, there's nothing coming off of Wright Street onto it besides a trail that
Little
was kind
two-track,
of two-track that was man-made, and there's a
Right.
house from the edge of the property lines, like we'd have a road literally going right up to our fence. And that's our concern.
so
Understand your concerns.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you both.
May I briefly ask
Hang
a,
on.
On the paper. Thank you.
Jennifer and Scott, sorry.
I can do it.
may I just ask a point of clarification to staff? If I'm reading the zoning regs correct, a site plan would be required, which would include application to the planning commission for approval of that plan, correct?
I don't think it would go to, the planning commission would go through department head review is my understanding.
Take a look at 46-215 when you have a chance.
Okay.
I think it would, at least, sorry to
No,
interrupt.
no,
It would give me some comfort and perhaps give some of the audience some comfort if there was another step in that process. But
Right.
if we might have some clarification on that, that'd be really helpful.
And they made good points.
Commissioners?
Yes,
We
Marcus.
do have Leslie on the phone. She might be able to look it up while you're still.
Yes. So the question, it was section 46.2-215. Was that the reference? That does indicate that in the case of multiple dwelling developments, all site plans are to be submitted to the planning commission for review and approval prior to the issuance of a building permit. So obviously it would depend on what the future owner wanted to construct at the property. Obviously at this stage, as everyone is aware, we're just at the rezoning part. But depending on the nature of the use eventually to be proposed for that area, if it was a multiple dwelling development, as that term is used in the zoning ordinance, it would require submission to the planning commission for review site plan before any building permits or zoning permits could be issued.
And Leslie, procedurally though, we don't even get there until the proper zoning would be in place to consider such a development.
Correct, yep, and that's where we're at right now, and the planning commission only makes a recommendation. City council has the final decision on this rezoning, and then after that process, if it is approved by city council, then obviously then the process would commence regarding submission of a site plan, submission of a special use permit application if that were to be necessary for the intended use in the district. So yes, quite a few steps would be necessary depending on the nature of the use if and when these rezonings were approved.
Leslie, maybe you could comment too. It's my understanding if it's permitted by right, unlike a residential planned unit development or a conditional rezoning, we would be reviewing that site plan for conformance with the standards of the ordinance, and we couldn't probably specify the materials on the building and not approving something that met the zoning requirements, the dimensional standards and setbacks.
Correct, yes. And as a reminder too, and I'm glad you brought up the conditional rezoning, and just as a reminder to the planning commission as well, and then of course to city council when this is set to them, the planning commission cannot, if it were to consider approving these requests, it cannot impose any conditions. A rezoning is either a yay or a nay. It's not like a special land use permit where you can impose additional conditions. That process would come, of course, on the back end, like you mentioned, when once we get to site plan review and approval, and then any other additional permit requests required for the intended use.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry for my interruption,
No,
Mr. Chair.
you guys understood what was said, yes? Okay, so it can't just happen, in other words. Okay.
And I'd like to just comment too that
Yes, sir.
it's not ever typical to present site plans or building elevations for standard rezoning. Those types of futuristic developments usually only happen with special use permit or conditional rezonings or something that requires a separate layer of review. But the standard rezonings, if they're going with they are allowed to do anything they can do by right or by special use permit, but all the things that they can do by right, as long as they meet the zoning standards, they'll be able to do that. You won't be able to decline that. So they are following the process. If there is a desire to have more review and know what the buildings would look like, you would have to consider a different path.
I guess I'm not, and I guess our council could advise us, but 46-215 sub B talks about the standards, and it includes contingent upon finding that development features, including the principal building, open spaces, service roads, driveways, to minimize the possibility of any adverse effects upon adjacent properties, such as, but not limited to, channeling excessive traffic onto local streets, building groupings, etc. So I hear your point, John, that we can't make it subject today, but I think there is still a review of, while not the building materials, perhaps the fit and finish of the proposed project in the neighborhood.
I think the positioning of the buildings, I think there would be some ability there, especially if you look at the site conditions. But like in terms of setbacks, if there's nothing objectionable about meeting the building setbacks, if there's no wetlands or nothing else, and it stops them from doing that, if they meet those setbacks, they would be able to propose things in that nature. But if there's something unique on the site, I think you could certainly, if there was a wetland or a better natural area with a tree stand or something like that, I think you could ask that they adjust the design to preserve some of those natural features.
So the answer is yes.
Just to piggyback off of that, another thing too, as part of that site plan review, and that's how I read 46-215 B2, is that the planning commission could require additional screening or buffering, keeping in mind, you're right, that the setback requirements are what the setbacks are, but there could be additional, depending on the nature of the property and the proposed use, and concerns of neighboring property owners, the planning commission could consider reasonable conditions to that approval, site plan or special use permit or otherwise, that would potentially address concerns with respect to neighboring property owners when it comes to screening or parking or what have you, to avoid any sort of adverse effects on adjacent properties.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience have any input?
Yes, Troy Baxter again.
Yes, sir.
Just to reiterate that we know there is a process to move through these things, and this is the first step in the process. The zoning, the rezoning, to be able to allow, the proposed direction. So if we don't move forward from where we are, nothing else happens without someone coming in and say, I'm gonna propose to do all of this, and then I'll purchase the property if. Okay, well, like I said before, I've talked with John, good 5 years on that circle. So that's why we're here today, is because after 5 years, it's time to get something done. And so I feel like that with the recommendation of the staff report and the reasons that have already been stated for the positive, that this is a good use of this property to do multiple family unit. And I'm asking the planning commission to approve the RM zoning to allow this consideration. And there will be more than ample opportunities to shape this project if and when the property is sold, and if and when an individual comes that's willing to work through the process with the planning commission and the zoning individuals and the neighborhood to bring it all together so that it's something that is an asset to the community and the neighborhood, as much as we've tried to do what we can do as Cornerstone Ministries and beautifying the city from one end of the spectrum to the other. 40+ projects that have focused on rehab and enriching housing and public spaces. This is just another step in the process of the ministry of the church. And the item that was tabled talks about our new home, okay? And that's a story in and of itself, but it's not for tonight. But without knowing what else I could say, just to be, if you look at all those things, and I feel like that it was substantiated with the legal counsel on the phone that it's premature to ask for the what ifs now in this consideration, and that we are strictly looking at a rezoning from R1 to RM, and if this is an appropriate setting for that. Thank you.
Troy, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it Cornerstone Ministries' intention to sell the property or develop the property?
To sell. Yeah, and we, by virtue, and since you asked that question, I have I'm going to call it another ministry that's an extension of Cornerstone. It's mentoring of skilled trades. It's a construction-based ministry where I mentor with, right now there's 10 guys in the program that we do construction, rehab all over the city. And we've worked with Mike Johnson, who has 70 properties around the community. We work with Rob Munger, who, as you're very familiar with, working around the city. And right now we're finishing up a counseling suite for Paddock's Counseling upstairs. We were very involved in the Shea Locomotive Canopy here, reaching back a little bit further. So we would, Cornerstone Ministries and the Mosh program would be a bidder, okay, for something that would go forward there. But right now, okay, there's no plans in place for development of the field. Okay, the only thing that is potentially to move forward is converting the church space into housing space. So that's where that's at, and that alone will take the cars off the street and reduce the number of people in and out of the neighborhood. You know, if we have a few people living there, as opposed to the people showing up for the party on the weekend. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Troy.
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Oh, please,
Yeah.
come back up, Charlie, you're kicking it around.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that, again, this is all just kind of in the planning phases right now. The city is the only one that has the rubber stamp. So any development would have to abide by existing restrictions. And if I could just put some of my neighbors' fears a little more at ease, I would absolutely take the neighborhood's feedback into consideration when crafting the ultimate plan for both parcels. But as Troy alluded, the yellow parcel is not something that's would be even remotely a phase one. So that's just far into the future.
Okay.
I got a question for you before you take off.
Yeah.
What's your target? If you're gonna build multi-unit, what is your target? What's your demographic? What are you looking to put in there?
Middle of the road. Yeah, young professionals, folks who might work in the industrial park, that kind of thing. And renovated to that spec as well.
Okay, because in my concern is, this is the first time in all the years I've done this that somebody's come in that I remember that didn't have some kind of site plan or something that people could see. Now that may be false, but do you remember that?
Well, due to what this property is, they didn't need it.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
But you got people here that wanna know what's gonna go in there.
There's still a conditional, they still have to submit the plan
Yeah.
as I noted.
I agree with that.
And he hasn't come up with the plan.
That's
He's simply thinking of buying it to use it for that purpose,
I
right?
understand, but it's also important to know what the demographic he's looking for as well.
That's not relevant to the rezoning, though.
I
It's
understand
important.
that. It is to them.
I know.
We can't use it as our determination.
No.
That's very important.
Again,
'Cause that's
more
the
than willing to
point.
assuage any fears that are out there.
Okay.
So.
Oh, wonderful.
We've seen a lot of other people come through here that put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
He's at least trying to do the right thing
Yeah. They know.
and address this up front before he makes a lot of plans, and I personally would do the same thing, so
Yeah.
I like his thinking there.
Well, you can spend a boatload of money and go nowhere.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Carts are expensive.
Anybody? Yeah. Please come forwards.
My name is Deborah Grimes, and I guess I'm looking at it this way. You have a neighbor who lives right there who's willing to buy it. I'm pretty sure that whatever in the future, if he decided to do anything with it, would be also considering what's going to live there because he lives there. So that would be maybe putting some other neighbors at ease because he lives right there. The second thing is, I hear revenue and I hear housing, and these are things that I've heard on Facebook, in the paper, around town, from the people. Everyone's looking for housing and revenue in Cadillac, and I think it serves its purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Did you sign in, ma'am? Oh, thank you.
Anyone else in our audience have input? Yes, sir.
My name is Ray Vassar.
Hi, Ray.
I'm looking at this project somewhat selfishly because I do go to church at Cornerstone Ministries. But also I'm a zoning administrator in Lake City. And starting with this project, I wish y'all had come to Lake City. We are hurting for housing. This would be a gift from heaven for us. And the steps that this young man is taking is completely in order for the Zoning Enabling Act, in that his ability to get the property rezoned by the current owner before he submits plans that may offset everything that's taking place at this time. I myself, I enjoy seeing the folks coming to the table with the idea in mind that we're gonna take step 1, step 2, step 3, and bring this commission along with them. I've looked at most of the documents, and I think this is a great plan. I think this is something that the community can use. The community truly needs housing. I work with Housing North occasionally, and I hear this time and time again. So any opportunity that would lend itself to creating some housing, especially for that middle income working professional class, is what we're sorely, sorely needing. If I could encourage this board to entertain some of that, I would be thrilled.
Wonderful. Thank you for your input, Ray. Anyone else? Try and make it easy to have everybody come up.
Are we still on the yellow one?
You're on the yellow one,
We're
right?
still on yellow. I have not closed the public hearing on yellow yet. Okay, we're done on yellow. So at this time, I'm gonna close public hearing on yellow. Board.
Well, I look at that yellow and I think, what else you can do with that? It's a pretty good sized piece of property. Either gonna have an apartment complex there, or you're gonna have somebody build a factory. Because it's so close to the industrial park, or you're gonna have solar panels, or you're gonna have a battery storage location. Because it's like the perfect place to do it. Not a lot of other uses for that, not that I can see. And it's been vacant for a long, long time. And like Troy said, there's not a lot of parcels that size within the city of Cadillac. And I think we visited that before. And we need those size parcels in order to get any meaningful size housing.
Question for staff. If that was to be subdivided or platted for single family, what's the lot size requirements now for a new in-city lot? Is it 60?
Second.
I looked it up.
You would have to have 9,000 square feet minimum for a lot.
And minimum frontage of
75.
75.
Ooh, 75. See where you're
9,000
going with
divided by
it.
75.
Good observation.
120.
Odd shaped piece, so it's hard to tell the exact size of that. Just trying to look at if somebody came forward and wanted to develop that into single family homes with a new street, how many homes are we gonna get in there? Just a thought, that's all.
Well, that
If
could
it
be-
was square, we could figure that out.
And that could be limiting its use too.
Yeah.
Considering you need a road through there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is we have not had any developers in the city in the last few years attempt to do hardly any single-family development in the city. And the reason for that is it usually results in a 300,000 plus cost to build a home, and there's just not a market in Cadillac. Every developer we've had come to the city in the last 3 years has been for apartments. And unfortunately, those tend to start at about 1,000 on up. So we're we're doing the best we can to build the lowest cost housing we can. It would be great if we could do it lower, but there's just not a money source to bring in those sub 1,000 rentals in the city at this point.
You plan to open the second one and then.
Oh, and then vote on them both same time? Can I do that, staff?
Legal, did you hear that question?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Leslie?
Can they vote on both of them at the same time?
Separate motions, but.
Separate
You could, yeah, have you opened the public hearing yet for the second, for the?
No.
No.
I would do that one, and then you could probably do one motion for both, based on the same standards, but I would at least have an opportunity for a public hearing on the second, parcel before you vote.
Perfect.
Great.
That's what you want. Yeah. Okay. Okay, all right. Number C, we have an application filed by Troy Baxter on behalf of the owner of the property, Cornerstone Tabernacle, requesting that property, 534 Aldrich Street, be rezoned from R2 to RM1. John's already gave us the presentation. So right, yes, I'm good. So at this time, I would open the public hearing for the red square to the audience. Anyone having any input for or against this proposal? 100% okay. I was able to finish, and I thank you very much, sir.
I'd like to apologize for losing my temper to John Putman.
I just, yeah,
And I've known you a long time.
you have. and
There you go. Let's start over from scratch,
I
big
would
guy.
greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. May I approach with a picture?
Oh, please. We don't want to see how cute you were as a kid.
Do what?
We don't want to see how cute you were as a baby.
Oh, God. I was even uglier then.
Well, we actually have that picture in the packet.
Yeah, that's today. That's
Mhm.
right before I came here. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
yeah, so,
All right.
good.
I've known you too long.
Oh,
This is a picture right today. This is the house. Yeah. This gives you a little better idea.
okay.
This is the
Yeah, we
shared
don't have
drive.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's right here.
Now,
Well,
Just a clearer looking
Yeah.
driveway since it's warmer.
okay.
You
Later,
emailed
just
that?
email it to us. So
Yeah.
we can have it for
Uh,
record.
that's the only problem I have with this one. I'm not sure if that's big enough. How many apartments do you want to put in, Troy? No idea?
No, it won't be my decision.
I was gonna say, Troy's out of the mix.
I know. I've just got to ask somebody. So.
No, I don't.
Okay. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Okay.
There.
So you got a one-lane road that's going to lead behind the church for the parking. Or they're going to park on the street during the summer if they don't want to. I don't know. I'm just saying the only drawback to me is the parking. The one lane to get in and pull behind. So, and the neighbors not being happy. What neighbors are happy when you change the property? As you well know.
Well, yeah, it's difficult. It's
Yes, it is.
change.
Change is hard.
Change is hard.
Is there an established right-of-way on this drive? Is there anything in writing, or is?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm done. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you, John.
Brian is my friend.
Oh, boy.
Amen. Oh, yeah. So yes, there is an established right-of-way per deed. It's a shared driveway with the property owner. Way back in the day, this was the First Church of God, Anderson, Indiana, which is now Northern Lights over here by what is the Indian restaurant. So when we bought the property, the house to the east was already sold off, but had been owned by the church prior to. So, and the field came as the same, it was all in the same purchase. So, we've had good relationships with the neighbors through the years, and I've made commitments to, have some of the new guys and some of the ones that don't pay attention to not park in the neighbor's driveway. during church, and it's, revisited. And that's why there's a no parking fire lane sign right on the side of the church building. And so, at any rate, this setting at where we are now with the church has been a very good, positive thing for us, and I feel the neighborhood. When we first came in, several of the neighbors up and down the street gravitated to the church, and their comment was to me that we have been praying that someone would come here and open this church back up. And so those relationships remain. Some of the neighbors have moved on, whatever, but we try to make a point to having good relationships with the neighborhood. It's just who we are. And so what I see this, the red shape, I can't call it the square, is still moving forward in a positive direction by going into housing, because the current issues that we have, the problems that we have, will be resolved. The issue with parking, a lot of the people that would just come and go out of the neighborhood, they wouldn't necessarily be there unless they lived there or they knew somebody, to visit. So that I see a lot of the issues being resolved that we currently have as a non-conforming use. I believe that putting into housing, changing the zoning, accommodating whatever easements or drives that needs to happen would be ample opportunity to address that as, things actually did, move forward. So that's my comment, and of course, I'm in favor of the red one being rezoned for RM as well.
Is the church going away?
The church grew out of that building 7 years ago, and we bought the Wexford County Jail.
I'm aware of that. But
And we are going to, Lord willing, help us. We're going to relocate the church on that property, which is a 5-acre parcel instead of 3.5. And it's got the parking, off-street parking, all this stuff that we need will be provided at the new site. And so the prospective buyer is able to accommodate a time frame for us to transition from where we are now to where we want to be.
so you do still use this church?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's 80 people in there every Sunday morning.
Okay.
One bathroom.
Don't drink too much coffee before you come.
So yeah, it's
They may miss the sermon.
when I said the party, it is a celebration. Sunday morning is a celebration.
Thank you, Troy. Any other comments on the red? Funny square. It's not a square. Rectangle. Everybody good? Okay. Okay. This time we will close public hearing. Okay, now we got them both on our plate.
A question for staff. John, pursuant to Mr. Coy's letter and your response, how, if at all, do the non-conforming uses of especially the red parcel impact, if at all, the rezoning request?
Well, in actuality, whether it's R2 or RM1, the side yard setbacks are the same, so we're not increasing the non-conformity. If anything, we're gaining ground because we have the front yard setback is a better situation than under than the R2. So it actually gets slightly better, but not much in terms of the non-conforming situation. But a simple non-conforming building doesn't have to interfere with the change of zoning.
Is that contradicting, though, what the letter from Mr. Coy on section 46.630 states? In all RM1 and RM2 multiple family residential districts, the minimum distance between any two buildings shall be regulated according to the length and the height of such buildings, and in no instance shall this distance be less than 30 feet.
He's talking about the distance between buildings with multiple buildings on one site and the distance between those buildings as they set on the site between each other, not between those buildings and the buildings that are on the adjacent properties. There's a little diagram in the ordinance that shows all the little arrows between the buildings.
I note that the survey from 2019 provided by the applicant appears to show a split of this property. I was on the planning commission then. Would we have split that?
It's platted, so any changes to the plat would have to come before a planning commission. However, I'm unsure of the history on the property.
So it's showing parcel.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and looking at the survey on the GIS, it shows that connected, and then on the survey it shows it not. So somebody might have filed to combine those properties.
Oh.
What would say?
Oh, looks like one there.
That's on this site.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't want to stop any questions, but subject to or based upon the record, the zoning ordinance, the existence of 46-215, the requirement that a site plan be filed and approved by the commission, I would recommend to be willing to move, and I'll do them separately, for the first, the Aldrich Street property ending in 089-00, if there would be a second and it's appropriate from timing standpoint.
We can't condition the granting of the granting of a rezoning on anything. So like I mentioned earlier, we can't say conditioned on the submission of a site plan. It's either we're recommending approval or not.
Well, 46-215 applies to that section, correct?
Yes, but we're not at that stage yet.
I appreciate that. My point was that under the factual record, the existence of another step, I believe that it's prudent to make this action, even though it is not contingent on that next step. Is that acceptable?
You cannot condition a rezoning on anything. So I would not recommend a motion that conditions the rezoning. Either we're recommending approval of the rezoning or not. I mean, because the applicant could theoretically submit a request for a permitted use in that district that doesn't require a site plan. It depends on what the intended use is going to be.
Okay.
Leslie, if I could just jump in for a second, Mr. Bowman, would it be appropriate if the motion acknowledged that there would be further steps? I think that perhaps is what Commissioner Bowman's suggesting.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I think the record of the discussion tonight clearly, presumes that, and I think we could include that in the motion. I just want to be careful that we're not stepping into the territory of a conditional rezoning, because that is a separate process and a separate type of approval that has specific procedures under the Zoning Enabling Act that we would have to follow separately in order to grant a conditional rezoning. So I just want to be careful about how we word the motion in such a way that's not saying or using the phraseology recommending approval on the condition that,
Understood.
if that makes sense.
Yes. So my comfort is because of the existence of 46215, and I would be glad to make a motion that does not mention that section.
Okay.
If the chair will accept it.
Oh, accepted.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that 534 Aldrich Street ending in 089-00 be recommended to be rezoned to the City Council from R2 to RM1 as presented in the application.
Supported. Mr. Bunce.
Excuse me, Bosher.
Yea or nay?
We're roll calling.
We're roll calling, and that was my name.
Yes.
Yes.
You are sharp tonight.
Bunce.
Yes.
We have way too many B's.
Bent.
Oh.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
Host.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Now, is this for both or just one?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That was the red one.
That was the red one, correct.
Yes.
534 Aldrich. Mr. Chair, at this time I would make a motion to recommend to the council the rezoning of the parcel ending in 100-00 from from R2 to RM1 as presented in the application and based upon the record in front of the commission this evening.
Support.
Host.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Bent.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Did you want to do that now?
No. Before that.
Oh. You could have. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. We still have a couple things, but if you'd like to leave early, you are happy to do so. Unless you want to hear our new business, you're welcome to stay. Okay, perfect. New business. We have a vote for meeting dates, which is in your packet.
Yes. Just routine first of the year business.
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the dates as presented by staff.
Perfect. Mr. Van Pelt.
Host.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Bauman.
Yes.
Bent.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
And vote for officers, we had a vote?
Yeah.
No, we just did that.
Perfect.
Every
Years keep
year.
flying by.
Every
Beginning
year.
of the year. And I would like to
Yeah, we just did
reflect
that.
the booklet has Fent as vice chair, but for the record, it's Putvin as chair, Bunce is secretary, and Host is vice chair.
There. Yes.
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Chair, I move for the renomination and approval of the current officers.
I'll support that.
See what happens? Usually you don't come in and get it.
Bauman.
Yes.
Fent.
Yes.
Bunce.
Yes.
Van Pelt.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
Bosher.
Yes.
Putvin.
Yes.
Host.
Yes.
Her reign continues.
Excellent. Old business, none. Board member comments.
I'd just like to, point out, when these rezoning issues come up, I feel like we take a very deep look at them, look at, the zoning requirements, look at the long-term need of the city, and don't make these lightly, and then also rest on the fact of these projects then come forward, need approval. It's not just wide open, here goes anything. And so to have a little trust in the process is I think it's important, and that these aren't just made on, these are hard decisions because they affect neighborhoods, but they also affect the greater of the city, and so that control lying within the structure of how the whole process goes should give us some comfort that you still look out for neighboring and adjoining properties.
Mhm. Well said.
And what I gather from all these applications and considerations is that housing is critical in the decisions, and there are places far and in between where it's possible to develop. And so all these decisions are going to impact communities and neighbors. In a way, I guess you learn to live with that, because things are changing. But it's not something we take, or I take lightly. It's important.
Agreed. Any other board comments, members? Skiing's been fantastic. There, that's mine. We've had a old, real winter. Anyway. There, I'm off the beaten path. Just go there. Okay, communications, annual report.
Yes, this is a report that is required to be done annually, if you didn't already know that. Due to our redevelopment ready community status, it's just one of our various check boxes. Feel free to read it over, and it is also available on our website.
Does staff need any official action from the commission, either accepting or approving it?
We do not, but you are more than welcome to.
Just fine with me.
I mean, you're on fire. So.
Just want to make sure you got what you needed.
Perfect.
Box checked.
Box checked. Perfect. I'm moving right along. Any public comments then? I'm moving right along.
Are you sure you want
Heck yeah.
I'm gonna shut up.
Oh.
I said enough. Thanks, John.
You're sometimes up here, you know, so.
I know what it's like on that
When
side.
will the meeting,
Go ahead.
when will the meeting for, A, we skipped over A?
Staff?
Yes. So you'll be notified the same way that you were notified about tonight's meeting.
Because it was supposed to be tonight.
Correct. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Publication will take place all over.
Yes.
It depends on when the proper documentation is submitted.
There wasn't enough stuff for us to look at.
Starting to tire.
And we didn't want to spin everybody's wheels and then start over. To be honest. Okay. Other business? Nada.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, hang on.
Real quick.
Marcus is.
Real
We
quick.
got a motion
real
on the
quick.
table. You
Marcus
were in
is holding
trouble.
us up.
I was raising my hand.
Yes,
I just
sir.
wanted
I
a
withdraw
quick
my
second to brag. Wanted to brag on the ComDev staff for the job that they're doing. And if you guys don't already know yet, they were successful in getting a grant that'll allow us to bring on a consultant to help us with all of the zoning code work that they've been working on now for quite some time. This will hopefully help us get over the finish line. Just wanted to say that publicly, thank you to Danielle and Abigail and John for being creative, finding some outside funding. It is a tremendous job, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and this will, I think, help us with that. Also, just to put the Planning Commission on notice, one of the things that that you guys all did work on very graciously, I would say at this point close to a year ago, was with regarding to Michigan MPUDs, and that clock is sunsetting this spring. We're gonna likely need to revisit an extension on that clock because some of the developments that we've been working on now, such as Cadillac Loft, well, actually not Cadillac Lofts, but a Master Street concept, and John, which one, is it Cooley, maybe?
No, I don't think Cooley needs it right
Okay.
now. I think it might just be.
Might just be Master, okay. Either way, we've been working on a development that might need it, and we might need to come back and put another extension in place even before the rest of the zoning code comes back. But anyhow, that was my update. I apologize for ending the adjournment of, of the meeting, so we're slowing it down.
Congratulations to staff.
On board.
Move to adjourn.
I'm on it. Out.